Good morning and welcome. This, if you will, is part two of an earlier interview we did with Darold Greene. The problem we had that the first part of our show is trying to condense 24 years of service into 1 hour. We didn't do a very good job at that, but we now would like to, if you will, as Paul Harvey used to say, and for the other part of the story. What we're going to be doing now, Darold is giving us a kind of a comparison, if you will, of what, having served on both diesel and nuclear subs, what some of it was like, some of the training was requirement, and some of the history. Then we're going to go to another assignment that he had as CO of all things, a floating dry dock. That would be interesting, we think. And then to make sure we don't undo anything we have done in the past, end up with his assignment here in Pittsfield with the Naval Ordnance Systems Command as NAVPRO, as technical director. And then he retired, joined GE, and then we're going to talk a bit about his family, his wife and the 3 kids, and then kind of a wrap-up, what it all has meant to him and how he in turn has meant a lot to us. Without much ado, Darold, we're on.
Okay.
If you will, as we said before, can you give us memories, if you will, of the diesel versus the nukes and how you reacted to them and what you think of them?
Well, fortunately, I did get to start out on the diesel boats and found out that camaraderie is number one. You know, you have to trust your shipmates because you have just a chance of floating is going down, you know. But anyhow, I think starting out on diesel boats and qualifying with that type of people where they were just as interested in you knowing their job as they wanted to know your job once you got qualified and everything. So there is, as the lower, you know, seaman, when you start out, they make you work harder, and it's probably best that they keep you busy every chance they get, and they make sure that you know everything that you need to know about the submarine to keep it afloat and be safe, et cetera, et cetera. Skipping over to the FBMs, which I was on 3 of those, and there's a same kind of camaraderie, but more in your department than the whole ship. Because the nuclear train guys are always busy back aft, and they are not as involved with all ship activities as we are in other diesel submarines or even surface ships. You know, I mean, the same, there is a camaraderie throughout the crews, but the nuclear power train guys have so much responsibility of what they have to do.
Go back in the forest?
Right. We only know things as just a shipmate, you know, where the nuclear spaces are, and you know, unless you've got 15 radiation badges, you're not going to get in there. So,
and if you glow at night, what happens?
Right. But the functions of the submarine, you still have to know the same as on a diesel boat, how to make it go up and down, and you know, surface, and all of those items that are necessary to be sharp and get your ship to its assigned mission. And so there's still the same camaraderie, but when you almost triple the number of people that's on a ship, you
Oh,
know,
diesel versus
for
new.
yeah, the diesel boat, you know, I mean, is the, if once you have more than I think the number on Cobbler was 61, but they came in with some, you know, once every 2 months you get a new piece of gear they want you to check out, and they'd rip out 2 bunks to do that, you know. And so the newest guy on board is the one that's hot bunking.
Deep, yeah.
But so you know, the nuclear power part of it added a bunch of testing things. You know, you always had to, when you started the patrol, you took blood samples, and then the end of the patrol, and they watched, you know, that if you ingested anything that you shouldn't have, and of course we didn't, but that was part of all of the stuff that was kind of a drudgery. You had to stand in line, wait to get somebody to take blood out of you, and all of that stuff. Where in the diesel boats, you didn't worry about that. You worried about next port you're going to pull into, you know. So in general, that's the difference of the general operation of the two, is adding in the nuclear power part and the nuclear missile part, you know, and so that, in a quick nutshell, is the difference between the diesel boats. And
Now, when we talked before, you indicated that you had made points with Hyman Rickover as being the oldest ensign in the Nuke Navy. Can you repeat that for the people that may not have heard it? Because that to me is a great story.
well, quickly,
right.
I was right after I finished nuclear power school and went to the prototype to learn to do the things that were going to be done on a nuclear powered submarine. I finished that course and had asked for shore duty right away because I really enjoyed the teaching part. And so one of the things is running drills to make sure that the crew members in the area knew how to handle all kinds of drills, and main coolant spill is a big one in the engineering spaces because it is the leakage of the water that is removing heat from the reactor. So it's water that's radioactive a little bit. That's about it. It just happens to be that water we use to transfer the heat from the primary over to the secondary steam that is regular steam. So to make sure that all of the men know how to carry out a leak, you have to have a drill. To do that, you know, you just all of a sudden kick over a cup of coffee and call it a main coolant drill, and you know they have to put on all their stuff and
Any sort of gongy and whistles or what have you.
all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'd initiated the drill, and I was down in the lower engineering spaces, and while I was there, there was a gentleman in a khaki black sweater down there that kept wandering over in the area, and I took him for one of the compartment cleaners and just said, you know, would you please stay out of the way while we're doing the drill? And you know, he kind of wandered over there a couple times, and I'd turn and looked and said, you know, he would turn around. So we'd finished up that night. It was a night thing, and you know, we were getting off at midnight, and we usually have a wrap-up of our watchstanding crew, that how we did with the students and all that stuff. And the lieutenant in charge just said, and I want you to know that Darold Greene was very successful in kicking Hyman Rickover out of lower level machinery space. Taking that to my next duty station, it was almost like he had followed me a year plus later, in that we were taking the John C. Calhoun critical for the first time in the shipyard Newport News. And every time one of his ships goes critical for the first time, he is there.
Amen.
And so, you know, I knew he was on board and all of that, and we had a couple of us, of the reactor control guys, in the maneuvering and reactor control area, so that we could take it critical. And of course, you have Rickover and the ship's engineer and the reactor control officer in there, plus a couple watchstanders of enlisted ilk that was in there. And it was kind of my turn to try and take it critical, because we've done a lot of rod testing and up and down, and so everybody was familiar with everything.
Could you explain the term critical so that those of us who don't know will know?
Well,
in basic terms.
Criticality is the point where you've added enough radiation to the reactor that it keeps generating heat on its own without adding any more.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
So
my point.
it just gets a hot. Well, I forget all the temperatures. Probably supposed to. But anyhow, that's the critical part, is when it is to that point where it is making heat on its own, and you know, we're still monitoring it, but you've exposed enough of the uranium in the rods to cause the heat to be, for that power level, you know, which startup is pretty low.
Good.
But if you start spinning up turbines and stuff, you're going to have to add more radioactivity and so on. And, but yeah,
Okay.
That's.
Thank you.
I guess the next thing I'd like to do is just quickly go through the submarines I was on, and
Good.
And I'll stick in there what life-changing things was in there. But on the Cobbler, where I was there from the March of '61 to December of '61, which was after I'd been to enlisted submarine school in Groton, Connecticut. That was where I got qualified in submarines, Silver Dolphins, and that happened to be a super time, because at the time there were a lot of guys that were joining the Navy and going to a submarine and then going to nuclear power, and that's a program that I signed up for. And what they tried to do was not have more than 3 or 4 guys, I heard after, that was in that program. There are some guys that join the Navy, go to submarines, and you know, they're not shooting for another job right away afterwards. They can go aboard and qualify and stay on that ship for 4 years or whatever it is. So anyhow, when I was there was 2 other guys that showed up that almost 2 months after me, that were waiting, that wanted to qualify and then go on nuclear power, as I did. But anyhow, the time on board there was great, because a lot of the time I was kind of the guy that they were worrying about. So I enjoyed that. learned a lot, got to be involved in a lot of situations that I was glad to, and of course, one I didn't like was we went into that winter before I got off. We went north and decided there was too much ice forming on the sail,
yeah.
and we turned around and come back, because you can have, you know, upside down ship. After I qualified, then I went to nuclear power school back in Groton, Connecticut, and after that I went to the prototype at Windsor Locks in outside of Hartford, and that's where I had my first meeting with Rickover. Before I left there is when I got married, met my future brother-in-law, and then got married.
Oh,
I didn't know he was going to.
I didn't
know he was going to be my brother-in-law when I first met him. But we had went through nuclear power school together, and we went through the power prototype together. And then I got transferred to the under construction John C. Calhoun that was at Newport Shipyard, and this was where I got there where the just laid the keel. Well, no, they were farther along than the keel. It was almost a closed bubble by then, but they still had a lot of work in the tubes area and stuff. But anyhow, that time was really where I learned about how a big reactor was going to work and all of that stuff, because the one we had at the prototype was a small wattage thing, and so you were talking difference of hundreds and thousands of difference in some of the things you had to know. So during that time there, that was a shore duty tour in my mind. We did a lot of overnight watches, but it was a shore duty tour, and my oldest daughter was born, and that was in 1964. She was a January 1st baby in Newport News. Then I got selected to go into what the Navy called the Navy Enlisted Scientific Education Program, which was take you and send you to one of the ROTC schools in the States, and you got a college education through that program. And so I was off to do that, and since way back in my life, I'd been at the University of Texas for one part of a semester.
Oh, visiting day.
So they sent me back there, and so I was able to get out of there in a little less than 3 years. That's when my second daughter was born, was there at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas, and now it is Bergstrom, it is now Austin, Texas's main airport. So, so I graduated from the University of Texas in May, and went to Officer Candidate School, and we call it our summer in Newport. I was went to boot camp all over again.
All over, yeah.
And the family was living in Newport. I had a cousin that had a couple houses there, because he had been stationed there for a long time, and he had a couple houses, and just so happened I got to rent one of his houses.
That's good.
And so that was kind of neat. After Officer Candidate School, that's when I got my little ensign bar, and went TAD to the USS Sablefish, was my second diesel submarine in New London, Connecticut. And I was on there until officer submarine school started, and it started in February. So it was October to February. I was on the Sablefish, and we were underway a lot and all kinds of stuff, and I was working as hard as I could to qualify, get my gold dolphins without going to sub school. But it was tough because it was through the holiday season, and you had to get most of your interviews to get signed off had to be from officers from the other submarines in the squadron. And it was just very hard to
get everybody at one time.
Well, you had to get them one at a time, but to get the guy that had the knowledge, and the ability to sign
like an
off.
oral exam we're going for your doctorate.
Exactly is what it was. And then there was a couple things where then you had to go ride on another boat in front of a CO and do all of the things. And so there just wasn't enough time. So I ended up had a good tour of being the first lieutenant and assistant weapons officer on board, and so after that went to officer submarine school. Then after officer submarine school went to weapons officer course in Dam Neck, Virginia, and then I was sent to the Ethan Allen 608, SSBN 608. It was in Groton also, so we didn't have to move very far. The tour on the Ethan Allen, I qualified in submarines on the second patrol, and so made lieutenant. When what was going on there, they were trying to get the Navy move on. It had kind of been in this doldrums area where if it took you, supposed to take you 6 years to make lieutenant, that's when it was going to take.
Time and grade sort of stuff.
Yeah, and they wanted to change that. So anyhow, during the Ethan Allen tour, Eric was born in 1970, so he's 5 years out of place. It was one of those things showed up.
Yeah, whoops.
So after my tour on Ethan Allen, as assistant weapons officer, I got assigned to the Polaris Weapons Officer course at Dam Neck as an instructor, and I was loving that job. And they asked me if I wanted to stay on another year, and I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." Well, all in the same time, they had a weapons officer that had a health problem, and they shuffled some people around and said, "We need you to get to Hawaii and go on to Henry Clay as a weapons officer on the Blue Crew." So, all good shore duties come to an end. And so I went on Henry Clay, and that's where I had the last missing torpedo that is still missing
floating
today.
somewhere.
No, it's probably at the bottom there. But after the tour on Henry Clay, I was offered the squadron weapons job in Guam, which is where the Clay was operating out of. And so I went back there as the weapons officer for all of the missiles and torpedoes in all of the ships in the squadron. So that was a neat thing that a lot of officers go through their whole career without having a staff job. And all of a sudden you figured out, you thought you had problems on your ship counting 16 of these and 24 of these, you know, when you really got to count all of them. So that was a super tour, and after that I was transferred to the USS Trout in San Diego as the navigation operations officer. After I got there, they changed the whole plan, and instead of operating out of San Diego, we were directed to take the ship to Philadelphia Naval Shipyard through the Panama Canal and start overhauling it to turn it over to Iran's, the Shah of Iran. Yeah. And so that was a super fun time, because we had the crew, the B crew of the ship there while we were overhauling, so they got to learn most of the things that they needed to know about the ship that a lot of us, you don't know. If you're not there when a ship is constructed or when it's overhauled, you really don't know what's inside some of those things.
Now, these guys, they're the Iranian guys, they're shadowing you in effect?
They were. And as we got closer and closer to getting through, both the Iranian commander and our commander, you know, says, you know, make the Iranian shipboard guys do the work, do the testing, you know, and you stand right there ready to sign it off or not. So that was a super thing. It came down to the point where we had been on 2 separate occasions with the Iranian crew off of Key West. We were down there, took them down there, and we did
Wrung them out,
up and down, up and up, up and down. You know, and it every third day, one of the wardroom got to stay in and you know, update your laundry and whatever, because you don't have laundry on those diesel boats. You know, you leave. And so we were trying to just keep the place from smelling bad, because we had 2/3 of our crew on there all the time, and they had all of their crew. Mm-hmm. So
kind of close quarters.
So we rotated the guys off and whatever, and then one officer went off. And the only guy that stayed on there for both of them the whole time was the skippers. The skippers stayed on board. And I said, I love you for it, you know. During that time, also, our XO was doing a diesel tour just so he could move up the ranks, and he was in one of the spook jobs in Washington before, and they wanted him back. So for 3 months, I was acting XO also. So it was a
fun game.
It was a busy time on there, and so after that, we got all ready to turn it over to them, and the Shah was chased out of Iran, and all deal. We were set up to give them 3 of those submarines, and we ended up not finishing one of the boats, and I can't remember which ones they were. I mean, I know that the ships that were involved, but I don't know what didn't get totally overhauled, because we were going to, you know, park them anyhow, one way or the other. So anyhow, that's when the Shah lost his presidency, or Shahism of Iran, and the Khomeini took over. So after that tour, I got sent off to dry dock school and was sent as the commanding officer of the Oak Ridge, which was in Rota, Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after, just going through that submarine transfer fall through, I was on my way to Spain, and they said, don't take your family because we're bringing the whole squadron back to Kings Bay. They were opening up Kings Bay, Georgia. So we towed the Oak Ridge to Kings Bay, unloaded a bunch of stuff that was in the bottom of it, and it then went to Jacksonville Shipyard, and that's where we, just south of Kings Bay, Georgia. And so we overhauled it to handle a new type of submarine. We were doing two types of submarines, or sizes of submarines, I'll say that, and we made sure that this could handle both of them anytime.
I want to interrupt for a second. You people may see this. Pat, can you get in? This is the Oak Ridge, and I'd like Darold to give us an idea what it was, but more important, some of the problems they had with respect to properly manning and handling this safety-wise, okay? Is that comfortable for both of you? Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is after it was moored in Kings Bay. It wasn't moored the same way as it was in Spain. In Spain, we had mooring buoys out, and it was in the middle of the bay of Rota Bay. Bay of Cadiz, I think was the right terminology. But anyhow, what we did in the shipyard, besides making it handle bigger boats, we put some sliding rails on the side of the ship, and what it did is it was gripped by things on the pier and allowed us to flood down and bring a submarine in and then raise back up without a lot of other people around. We only had to worry about a tug pushing it, getting it started in till we got some lines on it, or when we kicked it out at the end. And that was big because we had at least 8 buoys on it when it was moored out in the middle of the harbor. And so it was real tough because you had to have at least 3 sailors on a mike boat, handling those, making sure they went up and down. So that was one of the big things that was done there. I did want to say that of all of my jobs in the Navy, being the commanding officer of a ship is a lot of responsibility. But in this particular case, once you get this round, slippery thing in the dry dock, and it's got a crew that is not yours, but it's your responsibility, all of a sudden you really figured out what responsibility was. And so I was scared to death because when I was going to dry dock school, safety was the big thing, and of so many dockings of ships, 1 in every 20 ends in a death, and because the ship is round and you step on it and you're going to go to the bottom. I mean, and if you're out in one of the places that doesn't have the walk deck or the netting or all of that, and so that was the
Didn't
scary
they have,
thing.
like, safety lines or?
You do, but you know, when you're doing some of the maintenance that has to be done, you have to. You're not going to be on a horizontal place. Mm-hmm. You're going to be on the side, you know, and so yeah, you've got one of those rigs on that somebody's holding on to, but if you fall at the same time he goes and let's go.
2 for none.
Yes. So anyhow, I thought I knew what responsibility was until, you know, I was worrying about, you know, 16 or 24 nuclear weapons. Yeah. When you're working about somebody's life. So anyhow, I did 5 submarine dockings, and those are the ones I had to, you know, really do a lot of write stories and what we did and all of that stuff.
Procedures.
But we did a lot of small craft. You know, tugs come in, you know, and we'd work on them too.
Oh, as well as submarines?
Well, you know, it's you have to do not an overhaul, but a docking on these guys in less than their turnaround time, because they got to be right back out there on that button. So plus or minus 4 or 5 days. But anyhow, we did all kinds of torpedo retrievers. No, never did find that torpedo. But but anyhow, you know, we would put it in there and do work on that. So this little thing off to the side there is where we had extra berthing for the submarine that was inside, as well as our guys.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Now, all of this stuff, finally you get statesides, and it's about time to make another decision. I understand you ended up here in Pittsfield at NAVPRO. And those people who work here know what NAVPRO is, but give us your story real quick if you can.
Well, it was one of those where, since I was not nuclear trained, my job that they offered me towards the end of my career was Washington, and I had been there so many times that I just, it is in my mind not a friendly place. Most of the people, especially the military guys that work there, live way outside, you know, because they like their family to be a family, and so they're outlying areas, whether it's in Maryland or Virginia. So when they gave me a choice, I said, Massachusetts, Pittsfield, you know, and the wife says, the wife says, I know where that is, you know. So anyhow, I had, when I was on the squadron staff in Guam, I knew 2 of the engineers that were here, and so I called him up and said, do I really want to come to Pittsfield for any reason? And he says, oh, I think you're going to be there in the job. And I said, how about hanging around for years after? And he says, oh, I think so. Mm-hmm. So this ended up to be the wife being from Newburyport. This was a good distance, stay away from in-laws and
overnight.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's how I got there, and original assignment was to be the XO and the technical officer, and this was in '81 when a lot of changes were going on where we were going in the Navy, the Trident program, so on. And so when I got there, the captain is, they're trying to figure out who should have what job as a civilian and who should have what job with a uniform on. And that, you know, was really an interesting choice, but I thought that was a good way to go, because the more I thought about being technical officer, I was glad they took it away from me in a year, because it was a lot of traveling, a lot of responsibility, because you had to be sitting at every one of the big decision-making meeting all over the United States, and a couple trips to England, and because we were setting up a new program for the English Navy's boats. You know, we had Polaris, and then they kicked up to get some just like our new ones. So I enjoyed the tour. You got to learn a lot of stuff, and so as things were going along, I got passed over for commander, and I really knew that was probably coming, because I'd found out early on in my career that since you're 10 years older than a ensign, you know, when I made ensign, I was 10 years older than the ones coming out of college. That you know, another thing Rick Over didn't like, old men on nukes. on nukes. He wanted somebody that he could be in charge of, and not somebody that thought they knew it all already. You know. So I just checked around and decided that 3.5 years there was good, and so I at the end of April, I took a week off and come back to work, and in another building, and you know, essentially did a lot of the same stuff that I was doing before. Just.
Well, you're talking now when you retired from the Navy.
When I retired and went to work.
Back in '84.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, the things that I did while I was working at NAVPRO, you know, is, you know, just keeping things steered and on time, and checking it out, and so it's no different than a good division officer has to do before. But you know, and then once we had said that, well, when I did retire, do you want to stay here? The family said, yeah, you know.
Okay.
And because it was the longest that they'd stayed any place, you know. And so we said, well, when Eric, who was the youngest, graduated from high school, we might decide to go someplace else, but never decided.
Well, let's jump, if you will, into the family life, because I know a couple of times I've not done that, and some of the gals don't like it. But what was your feeling as far as marrying the kids? Now, the story that you told me about Eric being barefoot at Guam, that's a human interest. Give it, unless it embarrasses him.
No, I don't think so. He was born in the States, and we immediately essentially went to Hawaii and spent 2 years there, and then we went to Guam and spent 2 years there, and we thought we were going to San Diego and spend another 2 years.
A little further west.
You know, and so anyhow, the only time he wore shoes when we went to church Sundays. I mean, he just couldn't stand shoes. He would have those things off in a heartbeat. And you know, Hawaii, we lived on a street. Everybody had grass, and you know, it was just, shoes were foreign to him, and it was tough when we got to Philadelphia, and it was winter time, and
had to wear boots.
And he couldn't find anything that was comfortable. It took him a while to do it, but that's one of the things that you know, a lot of kids don't have to put up with, you know. But yeah, the girls, I think, had it the toughest, because they would go and just get a good friend, and we'd go someplace out, and they did keep track with a couple of them, but you know, as things got, and they got their families, so but the wives, I think you got to give I'm sure it's something the same in the other forces, but you know, when you deploy for, you know, in some cases for 4 to 6 months, you know, you get there's a lot of pictures that fall off the wall and whatever, and I think you know, my wife enjoyed the fact that while we were doing a lot of this, we were on the blue gold thing,
Okay.
and that other crew, you know, was there. All you had to do was call the chief of the boat, and
You had a backup buddy system.
and they'd come in and put in a new, you know, hang the
A
picture,
washer or
whatever, a leaky dishwasher, whatever. And so that was a camaraderie between the crews, off crew, you know.
Okay.
There was a lot of bad mouthing, you know, at the time you're changing command, you know, what do you give us, this dirty bunk back,
Yeah.
you know, and all that stuff. So I think the families do, and I think we had on the boats, we had a party, mid patrol party, you know, and the wives had a mid patrol, you know, just to help, you know. That means we're getting shorter to coming back and those type of things. So she, you know, she ran into a lot of people that she still communicates with, and on the wardroom, over half of the wardroom that was on the Trout, we still keep in touch with them, because that was kind of a.
That's a special boat.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. Scary, but fun.
No, not having had the sense, the courage, or whatever to go in one of those things and go down intentionally, I remember way back that used to be a slogan for Submariner with the silent service. But I talked with my wife about that the other day, and she said, you know, you guys, you and me and whoever else is doing the show, really ought to pay attention to what the silent service really was. The gals who stayed at home, the kids and their families.
Yeah.
No matter what you say or do, you never can really give them the credit and the admiration that they deserve.
I mean, I won't say it's inherent in wives talking, but to not say where her husband went and when he's going to be back is
that's rough.
Is tough. And until the children get to, you know, well out of diapers, where they're part of the household instead of something to watch out, you know, it's tough life out there for them.
Sure
You know, and they can't even bang the drum to say, you know, how good he's doing and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think it's those that stay married in the service, God, I think they got to be golden angels.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And they did. Well, we've kind of gone way around now. You're out. You're a civilian now. Well, strange birds, I guess, to you.
I still get a check though.
Oh, well, you're double dippers, what the hell. But have you made, other than your regular buddy contacts, you joined anything like the Legion, the VFW, and so on?
I am a Legion member for 20 plus years. You know, just as it you know, it's one of those things. Just as soon as I got out, you know, you can't sign up while you're still you know, wearing a uniform, and same with the Navy League, and so those are the two that I signed up for immediately. The FRA finally talked me into which was the Fleet Reserve Association.
Oh, okay. Alphabets.
Yeah, and that they were trying to get their numbers up, so they said that they would take ex-enlisted, you know, and so I signed up with them, you know, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago.
Are you still active in them, or?
Well, no, it's you know, mostly for the FRA, it's just, you know, I get the magazine or read it online and stay up with, you know, if something comes up and they want us to whine to the congressman, you know, those type of things. Okay. I had forgot that the Military Officers Association. Oh. I still paying there, and the wife keeps saying, "Why are you still doing that?"
Well, you know, you get into a habit after a while.
But yeah, in the local Navy League, I was a big participant in that up until the last 6 or 7 years, and then I was just spending my time with Habitat and the Sea Cadets that's sponsored by the Navy League. But I keep busy.
Okay, now to that, adding it all up, if it's possible, yeah, what's your reflection or opinion? Was your Navy training, life, existence a positive or negative effect on what you've done? But more important, what information would you like to share, or if you will beat the drum for some of the guys and gals coming up?
I can say nothing bad about anything that I went with. I was lucky to have some of the best instructors, shipmates, all of that. And I think everybody ought to have a tour, you know, just to say you've been there. And you can have a tour and not even get close to a weapon. You know, there's plenty of any of the services. There's a lot of things that you can do. And there are some that right now are getting their feet wet just because they're not hiring as like, you know, college grads.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're jumping in and getting their feet wet, you know, because it's a job, and you know, not everybody has to go to Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, or whatever. So there's some folks that we haven't had in a long time that are in there just probably 3-4 years, and they'll be out and may or may not stay in the reserves.
Oh, but give them some new experience.
But, you know, whether they're in the reserves or not, they're a candidate that, you know, that Uncle Sam can come back and tap you on the shoulder and say, come back. As I'd said in our other interviews, that, you know, I had plenty of uncles that convinced me that I should, you know, go out there, get away from the farm for a while. Yeah. And that's all I was doing there, was going to get away from the farm.
But you went a long way from those cows.
They kept hanging that little thing, well, you could go and get the officer program, and, you know. So if you like your job, they know it.
Yep.
And if you don't like your job, they'll know it.
Okay.
So I think, you know, my hat's off to anybody that served in the armed forces, over here, over there, and didn't go in harm's way. I don't know if I went in harm's way, but
you
I don't want to know.
Did it. Yeah.
I don't want to know if I did.
Well, getting out of harm's way, I'm getting a little flag over here. It's about time to wrap this up.
Okay.
But we've done a good job, I think, and I appreciate it, and I thank you. All I can say is, welcome ashore.
All right, thanks.
Now, for those of you who would like to see this program or other programs that we've done, I've just been told by some of the guys here in the studio, there is a way that you can view on demand these programs, ours and perhaps others, if you do this. Now, I have to read it to make darn sure that I don't goof it up. Here we go. To watch a video of this program on demand, dial up www.pittsfieldtv.org. Once you're on the website, scroll down to a link that says there are 3 of them, Access Pittsfield Show Search. This is located under the Access column to the left-hand side. Click on that. Now you're in the Access Show Search page. Enter your search term in the Show Search box near the upper left-hand corner. To it, type in the word veteran. This will then give you an opening in to the whole program. Now, scroll down. Some of them will be what we've done here, some of the work that Dick Nichols and the guys have done up there in Dalton. Ours are identified with a little arrow, said view. Push on that, a little box will drop down that says watch now. Click that, sit back and enjoy. When you want and anytime you'd like to see it, any of the programs. Now, again, to those of you who have seen the show, we ask that if you can and will have a program of your own, sharing your experiences with us, please get in touch with us so we can do the job and make sure that your work is not lost in history. Bob Stevens saying thank you very much and come back and see us soon. But stay healthy. Goodbye.